Welcome to this next episode of Generating Conversations and Creating Clients. And we have a wonderful guest named Nicole Freeman. And Nicole and I actually met in the AJC Coaching Career School, which is what has inspired this whole series, right? Of how do some of the best coaches in the world generate conversations? How do they create clients? And that's something that I think many of us, just from everyone that I've spoken to, we can have these moments where we go, who am I talking to today? Or who could be my next client? And so I love all of these coming together. And so I'm so thankful to have you here, Nicole, because you have built a wonderful coaching practice. And I have just witnessed the way in which you have continued to expand that and even your skill set in creating conversations. So it's lovely to have you here. And could you just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, all those good things?
Okay, I will give it a go. So I'm Nicole. I've done lots of different things in my career. And I guess this is kind of relevant to where I am now and the clients that I serve. So I started out as an accountant. Then I took some time out as a stay-at-home mum. I then set up my own business and I ran a cooking school for children for many years, which was around mindset. So I had a fussy eater. And I then trained as a hypnotherapist. And all this time I'd been coaching, although definitions of coaching, as we know, can be very different. And then there was this real pull. So I trained as a coach. I'm also a coach supervisor as well. And so I've been doing that for this is kind of year 4, sort of officially. And so I generally coach people around mindset and confidence. Often it will be people in professions based on my background. And that's, I feel it's really my calling and absolutely love what I do.
Excellent. I love it. And you are so wonderful at what you do. I've just seen the way that you interact with people and the way that you show up to be with them and reflect. And so I'm excited to see what comes through today to really serve those who are listening. And so, we were talking before this, and there's been many different people sharing many different ways, and there's something special that you shared, I think kind of an entry point, that as you are building your practice, well, you've filled your practice, but as you continue to build your practice, there is this premise of really having referrals, really connecting with more people. Would you like to start there, or is there some place that you'd like to start for someone who's wanting to generate conversations?
Yeah, let's start there. I think it's not just referrals. For me, it's about, and this is one of the things that I'm really deepening through AJC is just really being present to the opportunity to serve people and people in that, the person that you're having a conversation, like I'm talking to you now, James, but if I'm hearing something about other people in your world, could be your wife, could be a friend, I'm not going to miss that. And so it's how do we go deeper in those relationships that could then end up with a referral, but it also could end up with, let me offer a conversation to your wife. And so it becomes like that. So we're creating that opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, I imagine, somebody hearing this, I imagine they're kind of two minds. One person might go, well, I hadn't thought of that, or another person may be going, yeah, I do. I do talk to friends, or I do talk to family, and I hear them. But what are you talking about, or what do you mean that I could serve the people
Hmm.
that they're speaking about?
Hmm.
Could you share? Yeah, could you share more on what you mean to really illuminate that for them? Because I think you're touching on something really powerful here that so many people miss. They're kind of going around, oh, where's clients, or how do I start another conversation, or where's the strategy? And maybe they're thinking, oh, I need to put out another post, and meanwhile they've just had a conversation with a friend or a sister or a client, and they're mentioning something. Yeah, could you share more on what that looks like, or what you've noticed for
Yeah.
yourself?
Maybe it's helpful if this is okay, is to share some specific examples that I think might
Yeah.
speak to it more concretely. Because I know myself starting out, I think people say like, oh, have conversations, but you want to get into the granular level of detail. Like, how do I do that? What does that look like? What do you mean by a conversation? So I really believe that we learn through stories. So maybe some examples. So it could be, I'm just thinking of a couple of recent examples for me. So it could be somebody completely new. So I went to a wedding. I happened to be talking. I was not thinking about creating a client. But I happened to talk to this person, and I was just engaging in everyday conversation, but drilling down a bit more. Tell me a bit more about your business. What's going on? We had a sort of overlap in terms of what we did, and I could see possibilities. And so I just said to this individual, like, hey, would you like to continue this conversation? I've got some ideas for you. And so that's what we did afterwards. So it's a natural, sociable conversation, which is why I gave you that example. So it could be something like that. It could also be just really listening to existing clients. So I've had a couple of clients where it might just be a throwaway comment like, oh, yeah, things are just a bit difficult at home. My partner's got this problem of doing this thing at work. It's like, okay, let's just slow down. Like, hey, James, if ever your partner would like a conversation, like I'm really happy to do that. And I might go a bit further about actually, would that be useful? I don't want to eat into their coaching time. So thinking about how you do that. But I've had quite a few other conversations off the back of those kind of conversations. So noticing what people are talking about that we might otherwise step over, because my aim is to serve you in this conversation, James. It's like your wife's not relevant, but actually it could really be. That could be a great opportunity to create a really great introduction. So sometimes it's that. Other times what I'm seeing now is when I work with clients in a corporate setting, sometimes it's just getting to know other people in the corporate. So for example, speaking to the HR director or the client sponsor and really powerfully serving. So I've done that recently with a company I've been with, somebody I was working with. And through that, I've now got 4 other clients in the business. And I can see opportunities to do more. And that's purely from a place of, let me share with you what I'm seeing. Here are some things that you might want to think about. This is what might be useful. I'm not pitching, and I'm not selling. I'm just really serving and being present to that. And I think the thing that's really landed for me that I know is hard to hear as a new coach is it can take time. And it's really important when you're serving the client to think about their time and their agenda and not mine, which is like, I need this client today.
Mm.
So I hope that gives you a kind of flavor of, I think, what I mean, which is really powerfully serving and just looking for other opportunities that maybe we might miss, and being bold about, suggesting the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple things that I'd love to touch on here. So it might feel like I'm maybe going out to left field, but I think it's applicable.
So good.
The first one that you shared, where it was you said a sociable, conversation, and that person was telling you about their business, or you were asking questions about their business. Something that I've noticed that occurs for people is they think if they're asking about somebody's business that it's almost a coaching question. Um, and yes, it could lead to more. But I'm hearing from you that you would consider that just bringing true listening to that person and the thing that they're sharing or they're talking about. Is that right?
Yeah, I think in a sociable setting, um, I try and take off all of that attachment, and I'm just there as a human. I think we can't really separate it. We're coaches, and so we naturally ask coaching questions. But I didn't set it up as a coaching conversation, so there doesn't need to feel any pressure or any. It's just human interest. And I think what I was doing probably there was sharing things from my world that are relevant. So I suppose I probably still do that coachy thing of asking for permission. But I think if you do that, then that's okay. You'll get a sense of, is somebody really interested? And I think, you said really listening. I think we all, it's so rare to be deeply listened to. and for people to be deeply curious. I think people are fascinating, or I wouldn't be doing the job, right? And so just asking questions out of curiosity, tell me more, like, how does that work? What's the challenges? For me, that just seems part of everyday good conversation. It can also overlap with coaching.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. I like how you're really giving permission that those questions can still be great conversation for people, because I suppose, what's left if you don't, is the weather, the surface level. And I'm sure to have a really good conversation with someone is, like you're saying, to reflect that curiosity. And because we're coaches, we can ask more of the specific questions, and none of that pressure has to be there, but it's coming from the place of curiosity, not becoming a client, but
Yeah.
curiosity.
Yeah.
And the other piece that you mentioned was, connecting with the HR director. In that example, is that, you said you were working with a client and then you were connected with the HR director. Is that something where you noticed something and you offered to speak to the HR director, or how did that come about in terms of making sense, or even making that request or that idea to occur, if
Mm.
that's okay to ask?
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I've got a couple of examples of this, and they're slightly different. So, in that particular example, normally I would have, when I work with a company, so I'm coaching the individual, that individual would have a sponsor. So I have a contact in the business who's kind of loosely involved in the process. On this occasion, they decided they didn't want that. And so the HR person was my contact for signing things off, just keeping in the loop. And so I guess what I've done over time is to just share an article, share a book. We had an initial conversation about who I was and what my background was, and how the coaching package was going to work. So we'd established a bit of a relationship that I guess was quite functional.
Mm-hmm.
And then over time, just having that conversation and then saying, would it be useful to catch up? Or here's this, here's a book that we're just reading at the moment. I thought you might like to know that. Occasionally I might have emailed and said, I'm curious, like, what are you noticing? This individual doesn't have a sponsor. Be great if you've got any feedback. And so it's just kind of keeping that conversation going. And
Mm-hmm.
where I've had that slightly differently in other places is, in one organization, actually the HR person is notionally the sponsor. And again, they're not really involved in the process, but they had a request to touch base periodically. And funnily enough, actually, I have been doing that, sending them, would you like to have that conversation that you asked about? And it can go quiet. It's a bit like the ghosting conversation. I thought, okay, they've asked, I've offered, at some point they will come back. And then totally out of the blue the other day, they said to me, here's somebody else in the organization who wants to do coaching. They're going to fund it personally, and you came to mind. So there's a referral off the back of it, just through just being of service, whether they choose to engage in that conversation or not. I'm thinking of another organization where I work with one person. Again, HR was involved, and they then messaged to say, look, we've got somebody else in the business we'd like you to coach. And this person has now moved on to another organization. So actually the other day, I just sent them a message and said, hey, how's it going? You're enjoying the challenges in the new role? Like, after Easter, if you fancy a coffee and catch up. So it's just genuine. I'm interested. I'm interested, like, how this person's finding the new role, what's going on for them. There's no expectation. It's just, I think, giving yourself permission to create and build a relationship, and to be curious about that person, and enjoy the time. Like, I enjoy chatting to them as much as I hope they enjoy chatting to me.
Yeah. Wow. I love this, because I think it's often talked about, or we hear these things, but I think the stories that you're sharing and the way that you're sharing it really, really reflects the commitment that it takes, that you have. And I'm also hearing that this lightness to it, right?
Mm, thank
My wife and I were recently talking about creating, right? The sometimes when there can be this experience creating, it can almost wonder, maybe we put something out. Oh, is it going to get likes? Are people going to comment, or whatever it might be? And it sounds like, and so there's a practice of that, not being attached to the outcome. And so I'm hearing, a similar experience here of you have that curiosity, that sincerity, you're building the relationship, and you aren't attached to the outcome. It's almost as though the practice of the building of the relationship is just very, maybe natural isn't the word, but it's a part of your rhythm. It's a part of the way that you operate. And so I'm curious, what is the way that you view building relationships? Because I think, when I hear the word relationship, I either think I picture either somebody's married or they're in a relationship with a significant other, or I think when people have friendships and you've kind of been put together in school or friends hang out. And so I think in coaching and adulthood, relationships are treated differently. And so I'm curious how you view building a relationship where it doesn't have that energy of, are they signing up, or I need an immediate response, or what happened to this person. It's almost as though, because this is my perception, because there isn't that attachment to the outcome, you're able to almost put these deposits in a relationship and then shift and put deposits in another relationship. So this is my whole interpretation, but I'm curious on what you would have to say just from your experience and what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I love how you put that. Thank you. It seems like the two words that are the thread of our conversation are curious and relationships, right?
Yeah.
But I'll take the lightness, so thank you. I'm going to be honest, I don't think we're always unattached. So certainly, speaking for myself, sometimes we can get that feeling, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that, because there's nothing worse than thinking like, oh, well, it looks so easy and here's a formula. There is no formula, and it's not always easy. And catching yourself realize. So that's the first thing. I just see a relationship as, it's really hard to describe it. You're absolutely right. It's not necessarily a friendship, but I think in a professional setting, we have relationships with colleagues, right? We have a relationship with the guy that makes, the coffee in the morning, or anybody else. I don't know, I go to the supermarket, right? And I might see the same person. I have a relationship with them. It's an established kind of communication with somebody that maybe you've had a few instances of conversations with.
Sure.
So that's how I see it. And I really like what you said about that sort of putting deposits in. I think I don't want to say it's a long-term game, because it sort of feels like it's a game, and that takes away from being unattached. But I think it is just, it's showing up as, being what I hope is a good, nice person wanting to help. And that sounds on the one hand quite naive, but on the other hand feels for me very genuine and sincere. And there will be a boundary on that. It's like conversations with people. How many gifted conversations might we do, or how much might I be prepared to go and help? But I think that's so rare in the world that people really value that. And sometimes it will go both ways. You were talking before about the stories I shared, and it reminded me, I have two clients who are essentially like MDs of a business. And one of them's brought me in to coach two other people. And we've been coaching probably like 3 rounds of coaching now. So sometimes it can work really well. And on the other one, I had somebody who their number 2 is amazing, but I could hear something was going on. And so I offered this gifted conversation. We had a great conversation, obviously confidential. And it was a one-off. It was a sort of gift. So that's also another way that you can offer conversations is, make a gift for somebody else to give to a friend or a colleague. And so I just touched in with my client and I said, hey, I had that conversation with James, I hope it went really well. I hope they enjoyed it. And my client said, yeah, James thought it was great, but I don't know how I feel about sharing my coach with somebody else on my team, right? So there is that piece as well. Not everybody wants to always share, but genuinely, it was of service to my client. It was of service to the other individual too. And in this instance, it hasn't and probably won't result in another coaching relationship. But I still see that as being of service, because that guy left with something and my client really valued it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it does. And I think this is lovely, because we we haven't spoken directly to this. Here's what I'm getting. Here's one of the things that I'm getting from what you're sharing, though, is that with each person, the relationship is at a different level. Perhaps there's a different depth of connection. With that, though, I'm also hearing that we get to just let each relationship continue to make our deposits and let each relationship evolve and let it be what it is. And the reason I say that is it's almost as though, for instance, with the HR person, where you said, you know, you'll pass articles along or other things. You may not necessarily be best friends, and that's not a requirement in order to receive a referral. And
Mm.
there might be people that you have a deeper connection with that maybe you aren't receiving a referral.
Totally. Yeah.
And so to simply continue to serve, let the relationship be as it is, and you can't always predict what's going to come of that. But if you show up with this sincerity and curiosity and wanting to contribute or make deposits into that relationship, then if anything, you'll have a wonderful relationship, and maybe even some referrals or other opportunities that come along. Not
Mhm.
being attached to it, but knowing that that is natural outcome that can happen. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think you've really teased out beautifully there that it's about the process, if you like. The goal, in some sense, is have a great relationship with somebody, whatever
Mm-hmm.
depth that might look like, and however that might look like, because it's different for different people, right? The goal isn't necessarily make this a client or make this person refer me somebody or do it
Mm-hmm.
now or in 6 months or a year. It's just the goal is the building of the relationship. What do they say? It's, focus on, it's the journey and not the destination. So
Mm.
that's sort of how it feels like to me. Um, there was something that was coming up as you were talking, and I thought I must share that example. It will come back to me. But yeah, oh yeah. So sometimes, for example, service to me is connecting two clients, or connecting another coach with a client, or connecting my client with somebody else that could better serve them, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't always have to be in the aim of getting a coaching client. It is
Mm-hmm.
with the aim of really deepening that relationship and not knowing where that might lead. So,
Yes.
so I think that's for me, that feels like real service. It's almost where you might have a potential client. You're sort of saying, "Hey, no, you should go speak to James." And I think some people would see that as like, "Oh my God, why are you doing that?" But actually, if that's what most powerfully serving your client, then why would you not?
Yeah. And I think you're speaking to something really powerful here, because I think when people can hear the building of the relationship, it's almost as though they can sort of take it on as a goal, as a mission, and then that's where maybe that attachment, or I think as Steve Chandler would say, right, like the neediness or the creepiness can come in. And what I'm hearing from you is that it's each person gets to know what they enjoy to do to contribute or to build a relationship. So it's not this thing that they're trying to do, but they have practices around that. Um, and so I guess my question would be is what are some of your favorite ways um, that you do that? I mean, I'm hearing that you share articles. Yeah.
Mm. I love, as you were talking, I was thinking of your beautiful practice of writing letters, right, to
Yeah.
maybe prospective clients and sending clients, books. So I think it's anything that is really thoughtful, and that could be on the personal level or the work you're doing. So if we're doing work, then yeah, an article might be like, hey, I read this book and you should have a look at it because that really speaks to that thing that we coached on. That's quite specific, but it also could be something more generic. So I mean, this talks about building the relationship. Is this? I just want to check I'm answering your question rather than like creating the conversation. Is that
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. More about building the relationship. Yeah.
okay? So like, for example, with clients or people that I've signed, I will send them a gift when we start working together, and I might send them other things over the course of our time together. Um, I will do with some of my clients like an in-person day, and I will try and choose somewhere that's special for them, that maybe reflects their interests. So it's a more personalized approach, like just as an example, and I've never done this before, but it occurred to me as the right thing to do. So I have a client in the moment who's getting married, and I sent them a personalized gift. I've met their partner, and as it happens, they've now said to, I didn't know this at the time, but they've now said, actually, my partner would quite like you to coach them too. So we've had a conversation about whether they both feel comfortable with that. But, sometimes it's just those things that can land at a really amazing time. I didn't know that, but it was for this client. I just had a sense of, I'm going to share this example because it's so random, but I really believe that when you tune into what feels right for you, it can be amazing. So they were getting married, and I thought, what am I going to send them? And my husband said, well, you can send them a bottle of champagne. And I was like, well, that doesn't really feel like it. So I sent them a personalized silver cake slice. And I didn't know this, that when that package arrived, they just had some bad news. And one of the things that they'd also found out was they had a wedding planner who just got off the phone and said, and you need to do this, this, and this. And there was a whole long list of stuff that they hadn't done. And including on that list was, and you need to find a cake slice because we don't have one at the venue, which I find a bit surprising. But anyway, so this thing arrived, and it was like, wow, right at the time, exactly the thing that we need. And they've been let down by somebody. So it really spoke to, wow, somebody out there really cares about me. And that was just like really powerful in our relationship. I just thought it was a really nice gift. So that thing, what else do I do to build the relationship? I'm trying to think about, maybe, because this might speak to the other bit of people that I don't know. It could be just sharing an article. It could be offering an introduction. It doesn't have to require a huge amount of time or money or any money. So that's why I think sort of articles or thoughts or little TED Talks or, little gifts, emojis, that kind of something fun, knowing your client. So those are the things probably I like to do. And I think there's always new ideas. I'm always learning from other people like you, like, interesting. What might that look like for me in my world that feels, I suppose, authentic to me? So like, you can probably see the wall behind me. So I usually will send my clients a particular poster like that will reflect what they have, what we're coaching on and what's useful for them. And it's really interesting. They will often come back and say, remember that thing that I didn't think was quite me, but now I really have it, or I see it right in front of me. So something that speaks to them. And yeah.
Yes, it's wonderful. And I love that so much. And you also got me one, and I love it. It matches my office perfectly. So thank you. And yeah, I love this. And so we've talked about, generating conversations or referrals. We've talked about those deposits into the building a relationship, whether that's with clients or people that are, you're still getting to know. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring into the conversation here for someone that's wondering how to create more clients or how to generate more conversations?
One thing that just popped into my mind is for this to feel like real and authentic, it's essentially part of who you are. It's what we're being. We talk about this all the time. It's not a list of doings and actions. It's who you're being. So it occurs to me that that's probably how you're being with other people. And one of the kinds of people that you can have the same behavior with is other coaches, right? Create your own community, because you might be just the right coach for somebody else or their partner or their friend that they don't want to coach, or their friend doesn't want to, have that relationship. They might want to coach with somebody else. So that can be really powerful. How can you really serve another coach? I think that's something that I'd not really thought about, not in a competitive way, like why would I help that person? But actually there is something there that could happen. And I know, for example, now an example is coming to mind of somebody, a friend of mine who actually is a client. I think I said to you, I supervise other coaches. So I have a network of coaches anyway. And she introduced me to a friend of hers. And we had a really great conversation. It was a social event, and I said to her, you should read this thing. And I sent it to her afterwards. And, she picked my brains over a few things. And then she referred me to a big client that they had to do some kind of coaching supervision work. I had no expectation that that was going to come. It's a small part of my practice, not really even my coaching practice, but just being of service and doing the same things that, I shared examples, and I know you do too, sharing an article, gifting somebody some time, helping them can just be really powerful. You never know where that's going to be, where that's going to end up. And I think for me, it feels like a good way to be, something I enjoy.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'm mindful of as we're talking, because somebody listening might think, oh, are people going to be overwhelmed with an article or a book or an audio? And because I can speak for myself. We can be scrolling all day or during different times, and there's so much information. There's so much. There's so many articles. And one of the things, I forgot who I was listening to. Maybe it was Gary Vee or Tony Robbins or somebody, but they said we're exiting the age of information, and now it's more about like what's actually the useful information and getting connected with that. And so when when you send somebody an article or I send someone something, it's something specifically tailored to what we've heard them say or what they're navigating or what they're talking about, rather than them having to scroll between a million things and having decision fatigue and having 18 different ways to do something. There's you, a coach, someone who has an expertise that is listened and is hearing them, that is being thoughtful to share something that is not just a run-of-the-mill resource. It's specifically for them. And so I didn't want to overlook that, just in case anybody was thinking that as they hear sharing a video or a TED Talk or something. It's specifically meant to serve that person. And so I think that's just something important that I wanted to share.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's tailored, and it's usually short. I wouldn't generally say to somebody, hey, you should read this book. It's really useful. Like that's, it could be useful for all kinds of things. Like, why am I suggesting it? So I agree with you, something that is quite niche. And I think knowing the individual, I've got clients that are dyslexic. I wouldn't send them something to read, right? I'd probably send them a voice note or a YouTube short video. And that might sound really silly, but it's actually knowing your client, knowing their preferences, or just, you get a sense when you listen to people. The other thing that really occurs to me as you were saying that, and something I love to do, is send a voice note. I know that's not everybody's most popular thing, but that really builds that connection, because you're hearing somebody in the tone, and you can convey something in a really short kind of clip. Like, hey, I was reading this book and I heard about this idea, and basically it's this, and I think that might be useful. What do you think about it? And so normally as well, the other bit I think we've probably both stepped over is, if I'm sharing something, I will usually say, what do you think about that? Or I'd love to hear what you saw in that. And they don't always reply, but actually it's an invitation to build that relationship, put another deposit in, as you said. So it's not just like here, it's a, one-way street. It's inviting a kind of two-way conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. You have me thinking of with my wife. We laugh because we could send each other, reels or videos all day long. And so if I look at my unread messages, there's probably 14. And in truth, I'm probably not going to look at those 14. But if there's something that she really wants me to see, we kind of go, hey, look at this. And we see it and we enjoy it. And to me, I think it's kind of a similar thing. What you're talking about is, not only are you sharing a resource that you've specifically chosen for that person, but then you're even opening up the conversation to ask, what do they think of it? Is it helpful, or what did they get out of it? And it's kind of that version of saying like, hey, look at this. That in that case, it's, I really want to know what you think. And there's a different level there. when somebody receives something like that, which is so powerful. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
That's okay. Yeah. I mean, there's so many ideas just as I'm talking, and I think that's the thing. It's be creative and have fun with it and take somebody else's idea. It could be another coach. It could be also something that, you've seen. So just as an example, right, I recently engaged somebody in the sort of medical sphere, let's say, and without meaning this to sound judgmental, they replied to me like after about 2 weeks, and they sent me a report that I found quite challenging to read. And so it made me think like how would it feel to be my client? Like, what am I seeing for myself in that? How do I want to be that's different? Because it's our business, right? We get to run it our way. So I think sometimes also taking ideas from other people in other industries and thinking like, was that really nice? Like, I don't know. I remember years ago, I referred somebody to the dentist and they sent me a gift voucher. I wasn't expecting that. Like, that was really nice. So how might that apply if it does apply in my business? Where else could I gift somebody something as a thank you for referring a client, And I do that. But just as an example, I think it's sometimes more helpful when we think outside the coaching world and what was it like when we were on the receiving end?
Yeah. Wow. I love that. Because I think all of this is about building, each person building the individual systems, right? That serve them, but also helps them serve people. Because if we're just staying in this one realm, then we're missing a lot of opportunity or possibility to have ways that allows you to operate your business in the way that you want. So I love that you're illuminating that. And what have you noticed on your journey? Is you're generating conversations, building referrals, and renewals. What lessons would you have there in terms of having your own system? Because I think it's so easy for people to see a program or see a recommendation and then kind of go, I'm running this way and now I'm running that way, and I think it's really meant to be like you're picking apples, and what are the things in your own basket that you like. But I'm curious what you might have to share there, and that would help people as they're building their own system to generate conversations, to create clients.
I guess my first question would be, what do you mean by system?
Yeah, when I say system, I mean whatever is going to help them have their own rhythm and rituals, to have a sense that they know what they're doing. Because a difference that I have found is that I think when somebody's newer, or maybe they're still wanting to fill their practice, if there isn't a conversation or they could use another client, they may go into, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to find something different, or I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
Whereas I've noticed for more experienced coaches who have filled their practice, who are really committed to their business, if they have a moment or a time where they could use another client, or they aren't sure who to talk to, they don't go into their primary place to go is not into that conversation. Doesn't mean it doesn't occur, but then they almost more double down on, what do I know, or what is my system, or what has worked for me, and they have a trust in that. And so that's the advice I'm thinking of, is what would help someone stop thinking that they don't know, or what could help them identify what does work for them, or leaning more into that.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think the first thing, as you said, is there isn't a right system except for the right system that's right for you. I heard something else in what you said, which is the consistency. It's tempting to sort of say, I've had one call or I've had 2 conversations this week and I got no's and it can't be working, and throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I think it's trust the process and trust you, but also be aware to kind of gathering data. And one of the things I found really valuable from the school is logging the number of conversations that you have. and the proposal. So looking at that as kind of data, because that's the bit that we can control, is where are we having conversations with people? And for me, I would log those conversations as like speaking to this person in HR. So it's not a new conversation, but it's still that. And then I guess the system is how you track that. I keep it really simple. I just have it on an Excel spreadsheet. So I have some structure, but I also have a bit of flexibility. So one of the things I like to do is really listen to your intuition and be responsive to what comes up. So if, for example, I'm reading something in the newspaper and it's an article, I might think, oh, great, James would love that. I will try and act on it immediately, screenshot it, send it to you. And I might then think, oh, yeah, and Joe would like that. And so I'll do that. So it's not a system of every day I get up and I read the newspaper and I share something relevant. It's what occurs to me in the moment, if that makes sense. So that is, I suppose, is my system. Both you can be a structured system that I'm actually kind of tracking conversations with people. And I keep a list just so that I remember, have I spoken to this person? Should I follow up? And periodically I just run down it and I see what I'm called to follow up. So it's not, that's about as much structure as I have. The rest of it kind of flows. And I think that's important. It gets easier as you get closer to full, because I think then you're able to use your discretion more about feeling, do I want to lean more into talking to this person or that person? If I've got one spot left, who do I really want as a client? That makes it easier. But I think just still having those conversations and being of service. And then I guess systems. So sort of my edge at the moment of the systems is, when you're full, what does the system look like for still engaging in conversations with people and saying, but hey, James, like I can't work with you until June or whatever that is. So I think systems evolve. So that bit isn't changing it. It's how do you evolve, or how do we fine tune? But I don't think it's completely change it, if that sort of answers the question. Because I know for me early on, it's really tempting to go, well, this isn't working. And all these other people out there are talking about doing a funnel and having it differently. And why am I having an hour discovery call? Everybody else is doing 20 minutes. Stick to what feels right for you. And actually, that's something I really see when I supervise other coaches. They're often bringing this practice bit, like, what does it look like to run their practice? And almost what they're asking is, how do I have permission to do, for example, what I would say, play the service game more than what you might be taught in a traditional coaching school? And there's no judgment either way, but you will know what it's like for you. And I think it is instructive to think about, how do you like to be treated? Like I know I wouldn't choose a coach myself, certainly not at a higher price point, if I just had a 20-minute call. So think about the system that works for you, and that will probably work when you're serving your clients, and just kind of have faith in that. So I think that can help that trust bit that you were talking about. If that's what you like, then lean into that. Will probably work for you in your business.
Yeah. Wow. I think this is great, because I love how you're talking about there's the frameworks, right? Not getting too caught up in the frameworks, but what are the frameworks that support you, such as the tracking that you're talking about. And then there's, again, I'll use the word, the lightness of, even if you have a list of people that you've connected with or built relationships with, taking the time to look at that, trust your own knowing and intuition, rather than, oh, it's scheduled that it's been 3 months and now I need to send them this pre-formatted message. It's almost as though you get to trust into your own wisdom and knowing as you connect, or either to send a message or to share an article or an audio. And it all begins to evolve. So what I'm hearing is, have some, kind of firm frameworks that help support you, but also have this flexibility to honor how one operates, so they can trust their own wisdom.
Yeah. I mean, that works for me, and it may not. Other people like more structure, but I have this slight tension between like structure and flexibility. So for me, that works, having enough of a structure that I feel I can kind of log it and track it and hold myself accountable, I guess. But on the other hand, I like to be responsive. So I don't know, if I had an afternoon where all my clients cancelled, I might then think, oh, okay, well, now I've got time. Let me go down that list and see. But I'm not going to schedule it in and go, well, every Thursday afternoon, I will do this thing. For me, that doesn't work. But again, I think it's important to find what works for you. That's what.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I'm thinking of, there was a recent interview with, Tony Robbins and Alex Hormozy, and for people that aren't familiar with Alex, he has built some really successful businesses, and he's a person that really just works. And in the conversation with Tony Robbins, um, basically Alex was like, well, if I'm not working, I have no idea what to do. And so he's very rigid in the things that he does. And Tony Robbins, it was basically like, stop running away from your feelings, and so I think, honor where one is at. If you work well, really rigid, then go for that. But it can be helpful to have that tension, like you're talking about, between having the frameworks, having the intuition and the flexibility. And so to honor where one is at and trust that where you're at right now, as you're on your journey, what you need will unfold next, just as perhaps it did for Alex. And so, yeah, I was just called to bring that in here. But
I love that story. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for, really taking the time here, Nicole, to share the way that you see building relationships, creating conversations, referrals. I think it's really, really powerful because these are the principles that help someone expand their business, to fill their practice. And even once it's full, building relationships is going to continue to help them expand and grow and even raise their rates. So to me, that this is huge. And who's ever listening, listen to this again, because it's so powerful. See where you can apply this into your own business, your own life. It's huge. So Nicole, what would you like to leave people with? Yeah.
I think it's just listen to what feels right for you, and if you're enjoying a conversation, just never leave. Maybe this is it: is never leave an interaction or a conversation without a next step. That can be nice. Like, I'm going to send you something and let me know what you think. Or would it be helpful to pick up this conversation in a couple of months' time? I'll make a note in my diary. Or, like I said, if it's socially, it's like, would it be useful to, have a conversation about this in a proper coaching setting? Whatever that is, like that's I think something I'm leaning into. So you always feel there's momentum, and you're always, I love your phrase, James. So thank you for that. You're always making a deposit, and knowing that it's enjoyable.
Excellent. And if somebody had questions or was interested in working with you, what's the best way for them to find you or to reach out to you?
My website, which is nicolefreeman.co.uk, where you can find me. All my contact details are there, or you can email me, nicole@nicolefreeman.co.uk. But if anyone has any questions or wants to bounce some ideas around, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Excellent. Perfect. And if anyone would like to get in contact with me, you can find me at jmwhiteman.com. Thank you, Nicole. I really do appreciate it. And for anyone listening, let us know what you got out of this conversation, or what's the thing that stood out to you that you see as your next step, or the thing that you'd like to lean into, because we'd love to know. That's how we know that this is making a difference. And so we look forward to hearing from you, whether that's on this video or a message. And we'll see you guys later. Bye.